Welcome to the Churchill Musicians Club. We are currently at Unit 6 of our AP Music Theory curriculum, and we're almost there, so just hang in there. And as always, make sure to head over to bit.ly/cmc-signup if you haven't joined our club already. We have so many fun events, and you won't regret it. So this is Unit 6. Forgive me for the ugly flyer. There were a few typos, so this is Harmony and Voice Leading 3. And we're going to be covering embellishments, motives, and melodic devices.
Okay, so a non-chord tone is a note that does not belong to a certain chord. So non-chord tones are defined on like how they're approached and left. So the passing tone, which is abbreviated P or PT, is approached by step and left by step in the same direction. So as you can see in the picture on the slides, you can see this example of a passing tone, which is so the passing tone would be the F right here and the soprano. And as you can see, it's approached by step and left by step in the same direction. And this can go in the other direction too, as in like the second example. And it's unaccented or on the weak part of the beat. The neighbor tone, which is abbreviated N or NN for neighbor note, is a non-chord tone that is approached and left by step in different directions. And it's like the passing tone, it's always unaccented. So you can have an upper neighbor that goes up and then down. And then you can have a lower neighbor that goes down and then up. Or you could have two lower neighbors, which sounds like this. Or you can have a double neighbor or a neighbor group, which is a combination of upper and lower neighbors, which sounds like this. So you'll often find double neighbors in instrumental music as opposed to vocal music.
Another way to memorize passing tone, you literally just pass right through it. It can go this way or that way.
Yeah, that's how I memorized it in the first place. And so now we're going to be talking about non-chord tones, and we're going to continue on to anticipation, escape tones, and we're also going to talk about appoggiatura, which is my favorite. So an anticipation is a note from the next chord that gets held over into like the previous chord. And I would say that's the best definition of it. And then that can be shown in example 1, where you can see the anticipation of the C. Yes, that's anticipation. And then we also have escape tones, which are like approached by step and left by leap in the opposite direction. And then I would say that like the easiest way to memorize this is thinking about like the Star Spangled Banner. And then you think about like the word of in like home of the brave. And that like the escape. Yeah, that would be the escape tone. And then we also have appoggiatura, which is approached by leap and left by step. And it is usually accented on the beat, which makes it like an expressive non-chord tone. So you can see it's like different. It's like accented a bit. So hopefully that helps you memorize that. And then in the next slide, we'll talk about suspensions.
All right, so suspensions are accented non-chord tones occurring on downbeats, and they're approached by the same note and they resolve down by step. They're made up of a preparation, suspension, and resolution. So there's 3 parts, and sometimes the preparation is tied to the suspension. Suspensions are classified by numbers 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 3, and sometimes 6, 5. And they specify the interval distance of the suspended note on and its resolution to the bass note. So Andy's going to play this example here. Yeah, so that C kind of suspends the chord per se. It's also like suspension in a movie or a book, I guess, if it's like holding on to whatever's at hand.
Can I just add one thing about like suspensions and like anticipations?
So
Yeah,
if
when I was learning music theory, I learned like the anticipation as like when the soprano has had too much coffee, if you will, and comes in too early, while suspensions are when the soprano doesn't have enough coffee and so comes in late, I guess.
that's interesting. I like that analogy.
Yeah, I also remember like in the textbook that Churchill students use, like called Tonal Harmony. I think there's like a page that like gives you like a very clear like picture of what every single suspension, like what every single embellishment is. And I think I don't remember what page that was, but that was really helpful when I first learned this stuff. So I think you should ask Mr. Along
It's pretty
about that.
cool. And for anyone else on the internet watching this, hello. All right, we're gonna move on to types of suspensions.
So the most common type of suspension is a 4/3 suspension. It's a most common type of suspension, and the third is the note of resolution, and it sounds like this. And you also have 9/8, where the root is a note of resolution, and that's the only instance where the note of resolution is doubled because you're resolving to the root position chord. So there's also a 7/6 suspension that embellishes first inversion triads, and it sounds like this. There's also the 2/3 suspension that embellishes the bass, and it sounds like this. And 6/5 is the consonant suspension, and it has a weaker effect because both the suspension and the resolution are consonant. And if you can see in all the other examples of the suspensions, the suspension, all the other suspensions are dissonant, so it has a weaker effect than all of the other suspensions.
Okay. So a motif is a small musical idea, and then it is a phrase that gives like a sense of completing a formal unit, and then they always end in a cadence. Phrases always end in a cadence, and that's like something to remember. And then we also have a sentence, and it is a way of like building phrases from motifs. And then a sentence can contain one or more motifs.
And for this Beethoven sonata, we'll include a link in the description below in case you are interested in listening to it and analyzing it while listening to it. All right, so now we're going to move on to the period. It is a group of two phrases, so it's usually 8 measures. There's 2 parts to it usually. There's an antecedent and a consequent. Antecedent is the first phrase, hence the root anta or anti, I don't really know. And it kind of asks a question. And the consequent is usually the second phrase and acts as an answer to close off the period. There are usually 2 types of periods. There's a parallel period where both phrases begin with similar ideas. And here they are labeled A1 and A2 in this excerpt. And then there's also the contrasting period where both phrases begin with different ideas. And it's labeled in the second excerpt as A and B. And again, we have links in the description below for these pieces as well.
So melodic devices are like ways that motifs can be developed. So you have, for example, you have a retrograde, which is the reverse of the previous line. So here we have the theme, and the retrograde. You can think of this as like a flip across the vertical axis, if that helps. And An inversion is a rearrangement of the top to bottom elements in an interval. So instead of a third up in this case, it goes a third down. So it sounds like this. And a retrograde inversion, as the name sounds, it's both backwards and upside down, so it will sound like this. And you also have diminution, which is a form of embellishment in which a long note is divided into a series of shorter rhythmic values. So, okay.
That be it. That's diminution right there. Okay.
Okay. Anyways, there's also augmentation, which is the opposite of diminution, and it's when the motif is presented in longer rhythmic values. So you also have a sequence, which is when a melodic or chordal figure gets repeated at like a new pitch level, either higher or lower. So, and you also have mode change. In this case, it's from major to minor. You can also change the mode to things like Dorian, Phrygian, you know. Fragmentation is the division of a musical idea into segments. So in this case, we just take the little part from the end. Extension is like when you like lengthen the motif to make it longer. So it's like kind of the opposite of fragmentation. And compression is when you take out parts from the original motif. Okay. So.
Yeah. So we also have some other terms that we also need to like take care of. So we have like a prefix, which is an extension at the beginning of the phrase. We also have something called a cadential extension, which is an extension at the end of the phrase. And then it's usually after a deceptive cadence or an IAC. And then we also have elision, where the end of a phrase overlaps with the beginning of another.
We talked about deceptive, perfect, imperfect, authentic cadences, and more in a previous video. So if you missed that, if you don't understand, go check that out right after this. All right, so it looks like we have reached the end. Congrats, you have finished Unit 6. Again, if you like our content, be sure to smash that like button, and subscribe for more. And we will see you next month. Bye! Thank you for joining us.